Okay, so this is part 6 of my walkthrough of my Hex Flower Cookbook, which is a little guide I wrote to explain how I've been using these Hex Flower game engines to make neat little kind of ways of playing little mini games, perhaps, or generators. Um, as I said earlier, in parts 1 to 5, I've kind of covered lots of aspects of them. But if you don't know anything about Hex Flowers, I'd say maybe go back to the beginning and listen to it. And best way I just think of describing them at the moment is calling them, they're like a random table with a memory. Okay, so far we've covered the first two classes. I made these classes up. They don't really mean anything, but it just helped me do this guide. One was the endless game, one was the terminal event, and this is now class 3, which covers 2 terminal events. So this is a screenshot of a part of a hex flower I made called Law and Injustice. What it really covers is a procedural trial by jury. So you can imagine if your PCs are apprehended for a crime, you could play this little mini game that gives you sort of a different way of doing it. It's kind of meant to be fun. So the idea here is that you start in the middle, and if you get to the top of the hex value, you found innocent. And if you get to the bottom of the hex value, you're found guilty. So the idea is that hopefully if you're arrested, you want to get here or not here. Now, this brings in a couple of new secondary concepts that came about. One is that you recall that normally we use this kind of navigation hex, which has a propensity to pull you downwards and this way. So if you start here, there's a propensity for you to be found guilty. But it occurred to me that, and I saw this elsewhere actually, so I kind of pinched this idea, but it's a great idea, so I'm using it. And it's referenced later on in the document. I can't remember right now, apologies. But if you're innocent, what I realized is that you could use the opposite trend, where you trend upwards. So imagine the PCs are arrested and are actually innocent, then they have a propensity to be found innocent, but still a chance of being found guilty, and vice versa. If they are guilty, there's a trend to go down, but there's a chance they could still be found innocent. Now, to make this game more than mere chance, I introduced a new secondary concept, which were points. And the points that you can accrue, it doesn't really matter exactly. Let's use them in this concept of this mini game. So in this game, we had repute points, charm points, and law points. So if you had a good lawyer, you have some points to spend. If you have a character with high charisma, you'd have a bit more points to spend. And if you were, well known, player characters in the region, you might have some reputation to spend. You maybe saved the village 5 times. The idea here is that let's imagine you're in square 3 or hex 3 and you roll a 6. You don't want to be found guilty, so what you do is you could spend 1 law point, for example. Let's say you had a good lawyer and you had 3 law points. You could spend 1 law point so to pull it this way to dodge being found guilty. Or if you had 2 law points to spend, instead of going down, you could spend 1, 2, and end up here, or 3, 1, 2, sorry, 1, 2, 3 points and go up. So effectively, you've turned the roll of 6, which would be make you found innocent, to making you sort of back here, which is preferable and further away from being found guilty. By the same token, let's say you were here and you had one repute point, and you rolled say this direction, and you were actually innocent, so you rolled a 2. So here you'd be going off this way, but you spend that 1 repute point to be found innocent, and that's the end of the mini game. So in this mini game, you've got 2 terminal events. That's the sort of idea here. So the volcano, you only had one terminal event, the blow up point, but you've got guilty and you have innocent. But the secondary concept here is 2 different navigation trends, depending if you're guilty or innocent, and also points. Now, earlier I talked about this one here about whether you're welcome or not in a town. Well, this should have had, I hadn't thought of it at the time, but this should have had situational dependence. So if you're being naughty in the town, then the trend would be towards pitchforks. But if you're low profile and not bothering anyone, then the trend would be to this area where you wouldn't be getting into trouble. Okay, so yeah, I think that's probably a good place to stop. This Law and Injustice is on drive through. It's got some tables explain what these results would actually mean in reality.